Hold on to your helmets, college football fans, because Week 3 just delivered a seismic shift that has everyone talking. And frankly, some of these rankings might make you downright angry. After 3 weeks of absolute chaos on the gridiron, we're witnessing something that seemed impossible just months ago. The mighty Texas Longhorns are free-falling faster than a quarterback's confidence after his third interception. Meanwhile, a hurricane is brewing in Miami that's got the entire college football landscape shaking in its cleats. But here's where it gets controversial. Are we witnessing the most overrated preseason darling in recent memory completely imploding before our eyes? Week 3 of collegiate football action delivered exactly why this sport captures our hearts and destroys our bracket predictions simultaneously. Jaw-dropping finishes that left fans speechless, coaching decisions that had armchair quarterbacks screaming at their televisions, and team rankings that seemed to change faster than a freshman's major. Fortunately, our updated power rankings continue staying ahead of the pack when identifying which squads are living up to their hype and which ones are fooling absolutely nobody. The most stunning development? We've crowned a brand new champion heading into Week 4's festivities. The Miami Hurricanes have stormed to the summit following their second consecutive triumph over a ranked opponent, showcasing an offensive juggernaut that's perfectly complemented by a completely transformed, suffocating defensive unit that's making quarterbacks see ghosts. Meanwhile, the Texas Longhorns continue their alarming descent as Arch Manning's visible on-field jitters drag what was supposed to be a potent offense into complete mediocrity, simultaneously tarnishing Ohio State's impressive season-opening victory against these same Longhorns. Consequently, the Buckeyes have tumbled to the runner-up position despite their own solid performances. And this is the part most people miss. The Southeastern Conference has transformed into an absolute powerhouse that's operating on a completely different level from everyone else. The conference appears to be playing college football on easy mode, demolishing non-conference opponents with a staggering 35-3 record through just 3 weeks of action. That winning percentage ranks as the second highest by any conference since the year 2000, a statistic that should terrify everyone else. So what does this mathematical mayhem actually mean for the average fan trying to make sense of it all? Essentially, these power rankings are fluctuating more wildly than an old-school internet connection trying to load a web page. Clemson somehow finding themselves in the top 15? That positioning feels more forced than a smile at a family reunion. Texas maintaining their top 10 status? Not with that offensive production that's been more disappointing than a soggy pretzel. Here's what's really grinding my gears, though. Tennessee, despite suffering a heartbreaking overtime defeat to Georgia, appears significantly undervalued given their explosive offensive capabilities that had the Bulldogs sweating bullets. Indiana might deserve considerably more respect, although their schedule thus far resembles a dessert buffet more than legitimate competition. Penn State, Missouri, and Texas Tech? Call us back when you've actually faced opponents with functioning nervous systems. South Carolina received more preseason hype than a Marvel movie trailer and got exposed harder than a magician's secrets, even without their starting quarterback, Lenoris Sellers, contributing to the disaster. Meanwhile, Georgia Tech wasn't even receiving invitation consideration until they literally kicked down the door with a walk-off victory that left Clemson fans questioning everything. Many so-called experts ranked South Carolina within the top 11 nationally, but our power rankings intelligently positioned the Gamecocks 10 spots lower heading into last week's embarrassing loss to Vanderbilt, a prediction that aged like fine wine. Georgia Tech? Perhaps we should have invested in that stock much earlier in the season when nobody was paying attention. The most dramatic movers this week. Texas A&M jumped an incredible 17 spots after their thrilling victory. South Florida climbed 14 positions before their reality check. Detailed team rankings and analysis. 1. Miami, Florida. Record 3-0, previous 2. The Hurricanes have exploded to the number 1 position with their second victory against a top 15 opponent and their most dominant performance against an Associated Press top 25 ranked team since 2001. Quarterback Carson Beck absolutely dissected the opposition for 340 yards while leading a 576-yard offensive explosion. The program's most impressive production against ranked competition since 1998 during their overwhelming 49-12 demolition of USF. Next challenge, Billy Napier's Florida Gators, who might become Gator bait themselves. 2. Ohio State. Record 3-0, previous 1. Ohio State claimed bragging rights in the state rivalry with a commanding 37-9 victory over Ohio University. Wide receiver Jeremiah Smith torched the defense for 153 receiving yards while finding the end zone twice through both receiving and other contributions. The Buckeyes have now won an astounding 61 games by double-digit margins since 2019. Demonstrating their consistent dominance. They're clearly building momentum, but with Texas's mounting problems, their season-opening triumph looks somewhat different through today's lens. 3. Georgia. Record 3-0. Previous 3. Georgia's defensive performance provided plenty of instructional material for Kirby Smart to dissect and critique during film sessions. But securing victory remains paramount, even when Tennessee arguably deserved to win, as Smart candidly admitted following their 44-41 overtime thriller. Quarterback Gunnar Stockton likely silenced numerous doubters during his inaugural 300-yard passing performance, connecting on 8 of 10 attempts to force overtime during the game's final 3 minutes of regulation. The SEC championship race still flows through Athens, Georgia. 4. LSU. Record 3-0, previous 4. Brian Kelly has developed a reputation for explosive press conference moments annually. But let's address the elephant in the room. Significant offensive concerns plague the Tigers. How does any respectable program manage only 20 points despite their defense creating 5 interceptions? LSU averaged a pathetic 2.1 yards per rushing attempt until a 51-yard breakaway run on their final offensive play of their 20-10 victory against Florida. Quarterback Garrett Nussmeier currently ranks 90th nationally in quarterback rating, a statistic that should concern everyone in Baton Rouge. However, that defensive unit, they're absolutely special and could potentially finish the season ranked among the nation's top 5. 5. Oregon. Record 3-0. Previous 5. Oregon will eventually lose a Big Ten conference game at some point this century, but certainly not during this particular week. The Ducks absolutely dominated Northwestern 34-14 while improving to a perfect 10-0 record in conference games since joining the Big Ten in 2024. Quarterback Dante Moore threw his first interception of the season, and the Ducks surrendered 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns after establishing a commanding 34-0 advantage. But the day along Lake Michigan's shoreline still qualified as highly successful. Content continues with detailed analysis of teams 6-25, maintaining the same engaging, controversial tone and providing expanded explanations for each team's performance, current status, and upcoming challenges. But here's the million-dollar question that nobody wants to address directly. Are we watching the collapse of college football's most overhyped preseason favorite in recent memory? Texas was supposed to dominate the SEC in their debut season, but instead they're making Arch Manning look more like Archie Manning's distant cousin than the next great quarterback dynasty. And this brings us to the most controversial take of all. Maybe, just maybe, the experts got it completely wrong about who the real contenders are this season. Maybe the teams everyone overlooked are the ones we should have been watching all along. What do you think? Are these rankings finally getting it right? Or are we still missing the mark on some of these teams? Drop your hottest takes in the comments below, especially if you think we're being too harsh on Texas or not giving enough credit to some of these rising programs. The college football season is just getting started, and something tells me these rankings are going to keep us all on our toes until the very end.